Tosidevya Priyaya Hai Keshavashacha Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satya Namo Namaha. Vrinai Hai Tosidevya Priyaya Keshavashacha Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satya Namo Namaha. Jai Tulsi Maharani. Alrighty. Okay, good morning. Okay, it's good to see everybody this morning. Nobody's watching.
No,
now you got one person. Another.
Yeah. So you sending out the notification, right?
Yeah, it's good to always audio is good, and also the video.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jaya Raja Umarova Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Umarova Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Paramahansa Parvadikacharya, also Tada, Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anandagoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shridwaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai. Mathuranam Ki Jai. Jagannath Swami Ki Jai. Yamunamai Ki Jai. Srimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda. Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gaura. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shivadi Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nivasesha Shinyavadi Paschatya Deja Tarani. So Om Gana Timadanda Shah Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshuram Nidikam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. So reading from the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta, 5th chapter of the Lila. And this chapter, or this portion of the chapter, deals with a poet who has written something that is rasa bas, but rasa bas in such a way that it is not tasteful. Does anyone remember what rasa bas is? What is rasa bas? See if you roll it. Overlapping of mellows. Okay. Mellows means what? Taste. Good. You're all learning. And, of course, to determine whether something is a distasteful overlapping or a tasteful, it requires someone to be a great devotee. Because sometimes things will seem to be distasteful, but they're actually tasteful. Because, like, when you mix, let's say tasteful, you can mix sometimes anger with conjugal rasa, and sometimes it's tasteful. When Radharani gets angry at Krishna, she wants to beat Krishna, or Lila wants to beat Krishna. And sometimes anger with conjugal rasa is not tasteful. So it requires someone self-realized to understand the difference. Uparas, aparas, like that. Anyway, these are technical terms. So let's continue with this discussion. And so, of course, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, before he would hear anything from anyone, he would have his stuff reviewed, or the writings reviewed by Swarup Damodar Goswami. And in this particular section of the Caitanya Charitamrta, we find Swarup Damodar Goswami, who is actually chastising this Brahmana from Bengal, who has written something that actually is improper mixture of rasas. Actually, it's almost Mayavad philosophy, considering that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the soul of the body of Lord Jagannath, which is actually disgusting to consider like that. Okay, so now we'll go on. So, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Okay, we're on text 122, for those of you who are following along. Of course, anyone who's online in my Zoom account or Facebook can actually read along with us. Very sophisticated. So, Ishvarera nahi kabu deya dehi veda Sarupa deha chidananda nahika vibeta At no time is there a distinction between the body and the soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His personal identity and his body are made of blissful spiritual energy. There's no distinction between them. So it's just always the same. He is his body. He is his intention. He is his emotion. And we are different from all those things right now. We are not our body. Our desires are not us. Generally, they're coming from the influence of the modes of material nature. Our lust is not us. Our hunger is not us. We say, I am hungry. No, you are not hungry. Your body is salivating. And your stomach is secreting. Right? All right, doctor? So, conditioned soul. The condition is like, conditioned souls can be compared to Pavlov's dogs. You know Pavlov's dogs? You ever hear this example? Pavlov was I guess a psychiatrist or a psychologist or some stupid thing like that. And Pavlov, his idea was to condition people, not people, but dogs, to salivate at a certain time. So every time he fed the dogs, he would ring a bell. And so the dogs associated, what did they associate? The bell with eating. So at a certain point, after a few days, he just rang the bell without feeding the dogs. And the dogs were still salivating. So we were all conditioned like that. Isn't it? It's like we're all conditioned to eat a certain diet that may be killing us. Yeah. It's like habit. You know, like I say to many people, maybe you should change. Maybe you're dying. Maybe you have Parkinson's disease. And they say, I can't, Guru Maharaj. I'm addicted. I have to eat my sweets and fried foods. So they're on, someone is on his deathbed, all right. What do they say? Someone's final meal before they kill him. So Lord, so we're all conditioned like that. So Krishna consciousness means to become unconditioned, be able to decide. So even if the body and the mind are saying that we should do something, we use the intelligence just to say no. We're going to do something different. That's called the intelligence platform of Buddha Yoga. You know, you got the mind, intelligence, of course, false ego, but then you have the body, earth, water, fire, air, ether, the Pancha Mahabhuta. So we have to use the intelligence based on Shastra and based upon our objective in life to be Krishna conscious and please the spiritual master and please Krishna, to just say no to the body. And so one can do that. He can control his senses. What is it called? Vacho Vegam, Manasa, Krodha Vegam, Jivo Vegam, Udara Postu Vegam. One can control, tolerate these things, because the body is saying these things. My body may be saying right now, it's not, but let's say my body was saying, eat, eat, eat. I'm not going to say, okay, goodbye, no Bhagavatam class, no Caitanya Charitamrta class this morning, okay. I'm a guru, I can eat any damn thing, anytime I want. So, no, my mind, I don't my body isn't hungry right now, but I'm just giving an example. No, I said, it's Bhagavatam class, or Caitanya Charitamrta class, time to give the class, all right. Or let's say anger. Let's say someone does something that really angers you, then you just think it's not appropriate to respond in this particular way. That's intelligence. If we gave in to the impulses of our senses and mind, I mean, we'd be like animals in the zoo. Isn't it? Ooh, like a dog. A dog either, when a dog sees something, either he like passes urine on it or has sex with it, that's, or eats it, that's a dog's activity. It's just impulse. You can't reason with a dog. So we are human beings with a higher intelligence. So we can actually discriminate like that. So that's what it means. So we see Krishna consciousness means to really perceive the difference between the desires and the self, or the mind and the self, because the desires come from the mind. The mind's business is accepting, rejecting things. So that's what Krishna consciousness is, to see the duality. Instead of thinking, I am this, I am depressed, I am happy, I am hungry. It sounds like a very low-class person. I'm hungry. Children, you allow them to do that. You don't tell a little child, you're not the body and mind. If the child says, I'm hungry, you feed the child. But, for someone who has more developed intelligence, you say, you're not the body, you're not hungry. Mm-hmm. Of course, don't argue with someone like that. Like if your guru says, I'm hungry, I like some prasad. And then you say to the guru, Guru Maharaj, you're not hungry. The body is just secreting. I think that would be an offense at that point. So anyway, be careful how you apply that. But apply it in your own lives, not towards others, because that would be offensive. So Lord Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, this is Prabhupada's commentary, is a Dvaya Jnana, or in other words, there's no distinction between his body and his soul, for his existence is completely spiritual. According to the verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, beginning with the words, Vedanti tat tattva vidas tattvam 1-11, the absolute truth is always to be understood from three angles of vision as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Unlike the objects of the material world, however, the absolute truth is always one and always the same. Thus there is no distinction between his body and his soul. His form, name, attributes, and pastimes, therefore, are completely distinct from those of the material world. One should know perfectly well that there is no difference between the body and soul of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one conceives of a distinction between his body and his soul, one is immediately conditioned by material nature. Because a person in the material world makes such distinctions, he is called Bodha Jiva, a conditioned soul. Deha dehi vibhago yam nishvare vijate kvachet. There's no distinction between the body and the soul of the Supreme Personality of Godhead at any time. This quotation, which is included in the Lagu Bhagavatamrita 1.5.342, is from the Kurma Purana. All right, here's a long Sanskrit verse. Anata param balamayad bhavata surupam ananda matram avikalpam avida varcha pashyami vishvasrijamakam avishvam atman utendriyatma kamadas ta upashritosmi Tadvaidam bhuvana mangala mangalaya jane smano darshitam ta upashakanam tasmai namo bhagavate nu viddhema tubhyam yo nadrito naraka bhogvir asat prasangahai. So, translation. O my Lord, I do not see a form superior to your present form of eternal bliss and knowledge. In your impersonal Brahman effulgence in the spiritual sky, there's no occasional change and no deterioration of the internal potency. I surrender unto you because, whereas I am proud of my material body and senses, your lordship is the cause of the cosmic manifestation, yet you are untouched by matter. Continuation of that translation. This present form, or any transcendental form expanded by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, is equally auspicious for all the universes, since you have manifested this eternal personal form upon whom your devotees meditate. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you, those who are destined to be dispatched to the path of hell. Neglect your personal form because of speculating on material topics. This is a verse from the Bhagavatam 3:9, 3-4, and it was spoken by Lord Brahma. Kahan Purnananda Ishvarya Krishna Maheshvara Kahan Kshuda Jiva Dukhi Mayara Kinkara. Whereas Krishna, the Absolute Truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is full of transcendental bliss, possesses all 6 spiritual opulences in full, and is the master of the material energy, the small conditioned soul, who is always unhappy, is the servant of the material energy. Prabhupada explains this. The living entity is an ever-conditioned servant to the material energy, whereas Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the master of the material energy. How then could they be on an equal level? There could be no comparison between them. His lordship is always in a happy condition of transcendental bliss, whereas the conditioned soul is always unhappy because of his contact with the material energy. So how can they say we're always unhappy? Sometimes we feel happiness in the material world, when you go to an amusement park or something like that. Well, the happiness in the material world is described by Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu as giving an example of a dunking stool, the old punishment that they used to use for criminals. Dunking stool is a stool in which they lowered someone into the water for about 3 minutes. About 3 minutes is about all you can do as far as holding your breath for most people. And they put him underwater, and it's just like your lungs feel like they're bursting. And then they brought him up, and he could breathe. Oh, this is ecstasy. Mm-hmm. So it's like that. I mean, just like if you have these impulses from the senses, like the hunger, for example. The hunger is misery when you're hungry. And then you eat, and you just negate the hunger, and then you think that's happiness. Mm. So the happiness in this world is based upon the negation of the impulses, the needs, the happiness in this world is the fulfillment of needs. It's need fulfillment. Whereas in the spiritual world, you don't have these like physical needs or material needs. Your only need is actually to please Krishna. So you're happy all the time because you're acting to please Krishna. And there's none of these impulses that are there. Does everybody understand that? So it's the stopping of the misery that we take as happiness in this world. It's just and we're making all these different arrangements to stop the misery, but the arrangements we make oftentimes create more misery. Isn't it? Just like we think, oh, I need bigger house, because the house is too small. But you should get it for serving Krishna anyway. But anyway, and then you end up with a big mortgage. You get more misery. And then you have to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs. And then you can only go see your guru when he comes like once every 3 years, get a day off. It's like that story. You all heard the story before about the Brahmin and his underwear. Right? The Brahmin actually had trouble with his underwear because the rats were eating it every time he put it out to dry. You heard the story?
Yeah.
No, some of you didn't hear the story. Okay. Krishna Chandra's heard me tell the story 100 times. But anyway, so the rats were eating the underwear, so the Brahmin thought, I got to do something about this. And he thought, well, what's the best way to get rid of rats? You get a cat. So he got a cat, and the cat was taking care of the rats. There weren't any more rats. But the cat also needed something to drink, milk. So he thought, this cat is just crying, meowing all the time. I got to do something. Let me get a cow. So he got a cow to feed the cat. And so he had to milk the cow and take care of the cow. And he thought, this is really too much. I'm just like involved in all these activities every day. And then after that, he thought, I got to get someone to take care of the cow. He said, well, the best person, free. The only way you get a free person, you can't pay someone because otherwise it's ridiculous, is to get married. So this is a sannyas talk anyway. So then he gets married, and to his wife to take care of the cow, and then he discovers that children are coming, and she needs new saris all the time. So then he has to get a job. So then he has a full-time job to take care of the wife and children, that takes care of the cow, that takes care of the cat, that takes care of the rat, and so his underwear is not is eaten by a rat. So I'm not saying that everybody should renounce the world, but it's like that sometimes. Just take care of a little problem, then there's a bigger problem. I mean, like Prabhupada also talked about how we need all these modern conveniences like automobiles to get to work. Obviously to get to work, but because there are automobiles, there's work. You understand? And then you have to be driving so many hours a day to get to work. And if there weren't automobiles, you can just work close by. So the solution is a problem. And the problem is your solution. You can't even differentiate between the solution and the problem. Imagine if there were no automobiles, no modern conveyances, then basically we'd be farming and eating fresh vegetables and healthier and getting exercise every day. Yeah. Of course, we wouldn't have all these things like the internet. And people wouldn't be bombing each other all over the world. Of course, there would still be crazy people attacking each other. Anyway. So that's why the living entity is unhappy, because he's always trying to make adjustments. It's just like when you're sleeping at night, you have to keep tossing and turning because you feel uncomfortable in one position, then you change to another position. That's called chapalasuka. And then in order to enjoy, the typical first thing you learn in Krishna consciousness is bhoga-tyaga and chapalasuka. You have to just give up things to enjoy things sometimes. I mean, if you're always on vacation, it's actually kind of miserable and boring. But because you work, vacation becomes enjoyable.
The saddest part in this, Gurudev, is we all are contributing to the problem rather than contributing to the solution, actually.
Yeah, contributing to the problem. That's the saddest part. And then when you get old, I mean, what do you have? I like Prabhupada also gave the example is that you serve your body your whole life, and what do you get as a result? An old body. It's like you work for a company, and at the end of the, and when you retire, they give you a gold watch or something like that. Isn't it? I mean, I've served my body. I've fed it all life. I pampered it. I put it in a nice soft bed every night. And now look what I get after, 73 years. Oh my God, yeah. What a terrible master, isn't it? Anyway, so enough misery. So all right, let's continue. The Supreme Lord controls the material energy, and the material energy controls the conditioned souls. There's no comparison between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the ordinary living entities. Ladinya samvida shlishta sachinananda ishvara swavidya samrito jiva sanklesha nikarakaraha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Controller, is always full of transcendental bliss and is accompanied by the potencies known as Ladini and Samvit. The conditioned soul, however, is always covered by ignorance and embarrassed by the threefold miseries of life. Thus he is a treasure house of all kinds of tribulations. That's an interesting expression. Treasure house of all kinds of tribulations. So as far as the Lord's energies, Ladini, Samvit, Sandini. These are the three aspects of the Lord's potency. So Ladini is the pleasure potency. Samvit is the cognitive potency of the Lord, to know things. And Sandini is the what we call the existential potency, maintaining the existence. So usually it's described that Balaram is in charge of the Sandini potency. Sandini means it maintains the spiritual world, it maintains everything. And of course in the material world you find Seshanag, an expansion of Balaram who maintains everything. In the spiritual realm, it's directly Balaram who maintains everything. And the as far as the Ladini potency, that is Srimati Radharani. That's the pleasure potency of the Lord. And the threefold miseries are Adhyatmic, Adhibodhic, and Adhidaivik. Miseries from your body and mind. Miseries from the material energy. It's too cold or too hot or whatever. And miseries from other living entities, like bugs, viruses, devotees. No, not devotees. Sometimes. No, but from other living entities, other people. Relatives that harass you. Why'd you take up Krishna consciousness? Whew. So, all right. So there's a threefold. This verse is found in Sridhar Swami's Vivarta Deepika 176, wherein he quotes Sri Vishnu Swami. Ashuni Sabha Sadayara Chite Hoila Chamatkara Sachakaye Goshanti Dunhara Karaiche Tiraskara. Hearing this explanation, all the members of the assembly were struck with wonder, because they all appreciated this Brahmana's poetry before. And they were thinking, how beautiful the poetry is, and then Swarup Damodar Goswami is just showing them it's nonsense. Swarup Damodar Goswami has spoken the real truth, they admitted. The Brahmana from Bengal has committed an offense by wrongly describing Lord Jagannath and Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shuniya Karvira Haila Laja Maya Vishmaya Homusamadje Baka Yaiche Kichunahi Kaya. When the Bengali poet heard this chastisement from Swarup Damodar Goswami, he was ashamed, fearful, and astonished. Indeed, being like a duck in a society of white swans, he could not say anything. Poor guy. Tara dukkha deki swarupa sadaya hridaya upadesha kailaktare yache hita hoya. Seeing the poet's unhappiness, Swarup Damodar Goswami, who was naturally very kind-hearted, advised him so that he could derive some benefit. So why was Swarup Damodar Goswami influenced by the poet's unhappiness? Because the poet's unhappiness was a manifestation of the poet's humility. Because otherwise, was it Upadesho hi morkanam prakopayana shantaye, that if you give good instruction to someone who is puffed up, they become angry. So you see this often when you're instructing people, they just go, I didn't do anything wrong. So because he was humble, then Swarup Damodar Goswami rectified the situation so the person didn't have to suffer from his offense. And you'll hear how he does this. Yaha Bhagavata Pada Vaishnavera Stane Ekanta Shrayakara Caitanya Chadane. If you want to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, he said, you must approach a self-realized Vaishnava and hear from him. You can do this when you have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, probably always happens on the half hour. Vacho Vega Manasa Krota Vega. Like if you say to someone, don't talk. They last for about 15 minutes. Boom! Herein, it always happens like at this time, half the hour. So here, Damodar Goswami instructs the poet from Bengal. You hear Srimad Bhagavatam from a pure Vaishnava and learn from him. In India generally, especially, there's now a class of professional Bhagavatam readers whose means of livelihood is to go from village to village, town to town, reading Bhagavatam and collecting dakshina or rewards in the form of money or goods like umbrellas, cloth, and fruit. Thus, there is now a system of Bhagavat business with the recitations called Bhagavata Saptaha that continue for 1 week, although this is not mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. Nowhere does Srimad Bhagavatam say that the Bhagavatam should be heard for 1 week from professionals. Rather, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.17 says, Shrinvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha. One should regularly hear Srimad Bhagavatam from a self-realized Vaishnava. By such hearing, one becomes pious. Hridyantok sto yabadrani vidunoti saritsatam. As one hears the Bhagavatam regularly and sincerely, his heart is purified of all material contamination. A famous verse. Nashta prayesha abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhagavati bhavati naishtaki. By regularly hearing the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Bhagavatam 1.2.18. This is the proper process, but people are accustomed to being misled by professional Bhagavatam reciters. Therefore, Swarup Damodar Goswami herein advises that one should not hear Srimad Bhagavatam from professional reciters. Instead, one must hear and learn the Bhagavatam from a self-realized Vaishnava. Sometimes it is seen that when a Mayavadi sannyasi reads the Bhagavatam, flocks of men go to hear jugglery of words that cannot awaken their dormant love for Krishna. Sometimes people go to see professional dramas and offer food and money to the players, who are expert at collecting these offerings very nicely. The result is that the members of the audience remain in the same position of graham anda kupam, family affection, and do not awaken their love for Krishna. In the Bhagavatam 7.5.30 it is said, Matirna Krishna parato smito va mito bitpadyeta grahavratanam. The Grihavratas, those who are determined to continue following the materialistic way of life, will never awaken their dormant love of Krishna, for they hear the Bhagavatam only to solidify their position in household life and to be happy in family affairs and sex. Condemning this process of hearing the Bhagavatam from professionals, Swarup Damodar Goswami says, Yaha Bhagavata Pada Vaishnavera Stane. To understand the Srimad Bhagavatam, you must approach a self-realized Vaishnava. One should rigidly avoid hearing the Bhagavatam from a Mayavadi or other non-devotee who simply performs a grammatical jugglery of words to twist some meaning from the text, collect money from the innocent public, and thus keep people in darkness. Swarup Damodar Goswami strictly prohibits the behavior of the materialistic so-called hearers of Srimad Bhagavatam. Instead of awakening real love for Krishna, such hearers of the Bhagavatam become more and more attached to household affairs and sex life. Yanmaitunanadi Grehamedi Sukham Hitucham, Bhagavatam 7.9.45. One should hear Srimad Bhagavatam from a person who has no connection with material activities, or in other words, from a Paramahansa Vaishnava, one who has achieved the highest stage of sannyas. This, of course, is not possible unless one takes shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Srimad Bhagavatam is understandable only for one who can follow in the footsteps of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So in India, of course, we see many of these Bhagavat Saptaha people and reciters, and they're very dramatic. I mean, if you've ever been to one, I've actually watched one just to see what it was like. And the person is breaking out into song at a particular point, just Govinda, Govinda. And the ladies in front, they're in the front usually, going, ah. And, taking little cartels. oh, Radha, like that. I mean, it's really interesting and really dramatic. And people are mainly interested in hearing about the Rasa Lila in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Not so much about the other parts of the Bhagavatam. Some of the stories they listen to, like Prahlad Maharaj stories. But generally, and they usually do it at night. You know, I've been at the Bhagavad, sometimes they have the Bhagavad reciters go, other reciters, the second reciters, secondary reciters go during the day. Nobody attends those. But as soon as it gets at nighttime, the fun time, just like, you know, so people are so accustomed to that, even when we do programs in Fiji, they have to start at like 8 o'clock at night. Isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, I mean, you have to do it because that's the custom right there. That's that's part of strategy. And sometimes devotees have to even use some of the styles of Bhagavats reciters to attract people because that's bridge preaching, so to speak. You can't really give people too much philosophy or else it just goes in and out, in one ear, out another ear. So sometimes they have to. I've seen, like, we have successful devotees who have adopted that style, who shall remain nameless. I mean, it's not my style, but it's all right. I mean, if it works and gets people, and if the person doing the recitation is actually following purely, that's the main thing. Chanting their rounds, following purely, not engaged in sense gratification, not simply using the money that people give from the Bhagavad recitation to support, send their children to college, then, you know, then certain things can be done to attract people to Krishna. Even sometimes devotees may advertise we're doing a Bhagavad Saptaha, but they're not actually following in the mood of these materialistic people. The point is, what is that? Vaishnava mukod girnam putam harikatamratam shravananaiva kartavyam sarpo chisti yatapayam. That if one hears about Krishna from someone who's not a Vaishnava, it's described by Sanatana Goswami, who's quoting from the Haribhakti Shuddhaya, that it is like milk touched by the lips of a serpent. Yes, the milk is nice, Bhagavatam's nice, but when it's touched by the lips of a serpent, then it's poisonous. I mean, just like, to give you an example of the Ganges. The Ganges is pure, but it's not that if there's a dead body floating in the Ganges, dead body, you grab the dead body and, you know, you may get sick if you grab the dead body. So that, you know, there are things floating in the Ganges that are not pure, like pieces of stool. So, you know, but the Ganges is pure. So in the same way, Krishna Katha is pure, but a covering of poison can be attached to Krishna Katha if it's chanted by or spoken by someone who is not a Vaishnava. So what is someone who is not a Vaishnava? There's different types of non-Vaishnavas. One type is someone who's against Krishna, like Mayavadis and personalists, or atheists. But another type of non-Vaishnava is someone who is an abject materialist. You understand? Just pretending to be a Vaishnava, but actually just interested in pounds, shillings, and pence, as Prabhupada would say. So it's poisonous for our own spiritual life to hear from such a person. So one has to be very, very careful. Like if a non-Vaishnava wants to tell us about Krishna, you say, no, just tell me about politics or, you know, something interesting like anti-vaxxers or something like that. But nothing about Krishna. Yeah, or about football, right? Or the All Blacks, right? Yeah, better just speak about mundane things. If people are just, you know, people are mundaners, better to speak about mundane things rather than encourage them in their nefarious activities. Okay, so next verse. Caitanya bhakta ganera nichakara sangha taveta janiva siddhanta samudra taranga. Sarup Damodar continued, associate regularly with the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for then only will you understand the waves of the ocean of devotional service. And Prabhupada comments, it is clearly to be understood in this connection that the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's way of devotional service are eternal associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and perfect knowers of the Absolute Truth. If one immediately follows the principles of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by associating with his devotees, lusty desires for material enjoyment will vanish from one's heart. Then one will be able to understand the meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam and the purpose of listening to it. Otherwise, such understanding is impossible. Wow. Tabeta panditya tumara ahibe sapala krishnara swarupa lila vaniba nirmala. Only if you follow the principles of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees will your learning be successful. Then you will be able to write about the transcendental pastimes of Krishna without material contamination. E shloka kariyacha panasantosha tomara hridayera harite dunhaya lage dosha. You have composed this introductory verse to your great satisfaction, but the meaning you have expressed is contaminated by offenses to both Lord Jagannath and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Tumiyache tachika najaniyariti saraswati se shabde kariyache stuti. You have written something irregular. Not knowing the regular principles, but the goddess of learning, Saraswati, has used your words to offer her prayers to the Supreme Lord. Swarup Damodar Goswami informed the Bengali poet, because of your ignorance and your learning toward Mayavad philosophy, leaning towards Mayavad philosophy, you cannot distinguish the difference between the Mayavad and Vaishnava philosophies. Therefore, the process you have adopted to praise Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Jagannath does not follow the proper system. Indeed, it is irregular and offensive. Fortunately, however, through your words, the goddess of learning, Mother Saraswati, has tactfully offered her prayers to her master, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yaitjayendra Daicharikare Krishnara Varsana Se Sabde Saraswati Karena Stavana. Sometimes demons and even Lord Indra, the king of heaven, chastised Krishna, but Mother Saraswati, taking advantage of their words, offered prayers to the Lord. Vachalam Baliyasam Stabdam Jnanam Paditamaninam Krishnam Archam Apashracha Gopame Chakrur Apriyam. Lord Indra said, this Krishna, who is an ordinary human being, is talkative, childish, impudent, and ignorant. Although he thinks himself very learned, the coward men in Vrindavan have offended me by accepting him. This has not been greatly appreciated by me. Phew. That's when they didn't perform the Indra Yajna. This verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:25-5. Aishvarya Made Matahindra Yena Matoyala Mudina Sha Haila Kevala Nahika Sambhala. Indra, the king of heaven, being too proud of his heavenly opulences, became like a madman. Thus bereft of his intelligence, he could not restrain himself from speaking nonsensically about Krishna. Indra Bale Muni Krishnara Kariyachi Nindana Tarai Mukhe Saraswati Karena Stavana. Thus Indra thought, I have properly chastised Krishna and defamed him. But Saraswati, the goddess of learning, took this opportunity to offer praise to Krishna. So maybe we'll hear the praise or the interpretation of how it becomes praise tomorrow. So continue from text 140. So let us stop sharing and allow people to unmute, but first we're going to take questions from the devotees here. Okay, who has questions? Anyone? No?
Gurudev,
Yeah.
in India, there's this population of people, like even myself including here. I did not know about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Mm.
So why is it so that even though everything is very authentic, everything has come up in a very systematic manner, and India is considered to be a very spiritual country, why is it why there is so much of mix-up in India?
Well, one reason is that according to the Bhagavatam, that many demons will take birth in Brahmin families. Not everybody in a Brahmin family is a demon. I have to be careful. But many demons, and they'll mislead people. I mean, generally, in India, impersonalism is pretty rampant. You know, and generally, even if you study in the university outside of India, about Hinduism, they'll always define Hinduism in terms of either Shankaracharya or Vivekananda, one of the two. So people really don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. Not only do they not understand Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but they don't even understand personalism versus impersonalism. Generally, you know, you worship Krishna, Krishna's God, but they don't really understand what it means to be God. You know, God, what is God? It's just, you know, and people are generally worshiping for ulterior purposes too. You know, they're going to the demigods, you know, just like this. Yesterday was Akshaya Tritiya, and it's a special day to start business enterprises, special day to buy gold. And I didn't even get any gold yesterday. kind of people, no one gave me any gold. You know, I wanted to have some gold earrings and things like that. So you get into all these different, mainly it's all these rituals without understanding of really what's the meaning of them, isn't it? It's just like automatically you do all these rituals, or you have some like superstitious meaning. It's not a meaning really. It's not a why. It's just like business stuff, you know. Akshaya Tritiya, you know, I'll be successful. Wow, I'll be rich if I invest in the stock market today. And then, anyway, then at Diwali, what are you supposed to do at Diwali? You're not supposed to give money on Diwali. Because if you give money on Diwali, the rest of the year the money will flow out. Isn't that true? So that's why I never visit anyone's house on Diwali. Because they don't even give me. They don't even give me prasadam on Diwali. No sweets, they distribute sweets. But I understand that. So you got all these different things, you know, all these different activities, and there's no reason behind them. So the reason they haven't heard about Lord Chaitanya, and the reason and to say India is a very spiritual place, I have my doubts about it. I mean, every river is, you know, a spiritual river in India, and many people get spiritual names just by being born in India. That is true. I mean, there is a lot of spirituality there, but there's a lot of influence of Kali Yuga in India now. I mean, there's a great deal of abuse of women in India. There's in the cities. There's in many cases there's more degradation than some of the Western cities. Like you go to Delhi, or Mumbai. I mean, so right now, I mean the people are not necessarily any more spiritual in India than they are in the West at this point. I mean, maybe previously in the past it was different. Or it was different, obviously, when Yudhisthira Maharaj was there, but now it's Kali Yuga. So if one's ready to hear about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna will make the arrangement. Like when we were discussing this, that, Brahmanda Brahmate Khan the Bhagwan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi by Bhakti Lata Bij, that living entity is wandering not only in India, not only in the West, but in all the different universes. And by the mercy of Krishna, when someone is ready, Krishna will send guru or instruction. Just like, when I was ready, when I was like 18, I heard Prabhupada chanting on the radio. And, someone asked me a question yesterday, why did I have to wait till I was 50 years old to do this? I said, you weren't ready beforehand. One has to come to a point like, I want something different. I want to know what's happening. Crying out to God. I mean, before I actually heard Prabhupada, I was crying out to God. Please, tell me, what's the purpose of life? Help. God, let me serve you. I had, in English, I was making these prayers because I didn't know any Bengali. So I remember driving my car and just praying, not about the ticket, and just praying, God, show me, help. And because I was ready, then I turned on the radio and there was Prabhupada. Or someone gave me a Krishna book because I was ready. If I wasn't ready, it wouldn't have happened like that. Isn't it? So when you're ready, then Krishna makes the arrangement. It's like that. I don't know if you've ever heard of this thing that many people in the Western world believe in. It's called The Secret. Anyone heard of that? No. Anyway, that people, it's a new age thought process. That if you really want something enough, the universe will give it to you.
Law of attraction.
The law of attraction, yeah, it's called The Secret. Law of attraction. The universe is meant to serve you. In one sense, it's right. Not that, if you want, let's say, a big yacht or something like that. If you have good karma, the universe will give it to you. I mean, the laws of karma and the demigods and everything like that. But in the sense that if you really want to understand God, then Krishna will arrange that you'll meet someone or hear something or read something or get a book, and everything will be taken care of. So nothing's by accident. So the reason you didn't hear about Lord Chaitanya is you weren't ready until you came to New Zealand.
It clearly seems that I was there for so long, but why New Zealand?
Well, because in India it's generally really hodgepodge. It's really hodgepodge. I mean, people's belief structures are just like all over the place. And by Prabhupada's mercy, we find that many times that people from India become devotees in the West, and they wouldn't have become devotees in India. And also another reason is because all the family members are there in India. And the family members would say, what the hell are you doing with those Hare Krishna people? There's propaganda sometimes in India against the Hare Krishna movement. And there was one movie years ago before any of you were born. It's Hare Krishna Dum Dum, something like that. Which showed, depicted the Hare Krishna movement as like marijuana smoking people. And so people are also afraid of the Hare Krishna movement in India because they're afraid that they'll lose their children. Because there's this whole conception that your children will become devotees and they'll leave you. I mean, look what happened to you. You lost your daughter because of the Hare Krishna movement. Right? She became a fanatic Hare Krishna devotee. You brought her to North Carolina and that was it, Right? Now she's just an accountant. She could have been a doctor, If it wasn't for Krishna consciousness, she would be a doctor right now. So. Isn't it great disappointment? I mean, actually, we had people, children who from Indian families who actually moved in the temple, wanted to be full-time devotees, and the parents just gave them such guilt trips. In one case, the girl committed suicide because the parents would just write to them, you've destroyed our lives. You're embarrassing the family. I'm dying because of you. And, imagine getting that from your parents. I got that from my mother, too. There's a story of my mother, the guy sent messages through various family members, your mother's on her deathbed because of you. And of course, in the West, we're a little more detached than in India. So I just thought, well, if she's thinking of me on her deathbed and she passes, then she'll have a fortunate birth in her next life. But she didn't. I knew she wasn't going to die. I knew it was just a guilt trip. And, and she lived till 93. So, but it's like that in India too, just like when you got these family members and family pressure and everything like that. You become a devotee and you've given up, your Hinduism or whatever it is. And yeah. I've seen that also in Fiji to a lesser extent than India. That when one joins the movement and they're not worshiping the demigod so much anymore, then what'll happen, let's say if they get sick, the parents will say, this is because you didn't worship Durga or do Ganesh Puja, and you're going to die. And the poor kid gets this traumatic experience from dealing with his parents. Yeah, so sometimes it's better not to be in India.
People are more ritualistic, Gurudev, in India.
Yeah.
And even in my family, I've seen my friends, my family members, whatever the parents and grandparents they say they'll follow, they have never questioned them back.
Yeah.
Why? Why are we doing this?
They never question why they're doing it. And also, there's much more pressure to excel materially.
Yeah.
Like if someone's in school, it's much more competitive, to get into the best university. I remember there was one picture I saw one time. The kids were taking some exams to get into a university, and the parents were actually passing them the answers to the exams. But the interesting way that parents are doing it, the kids were on the third floor of a building, and there was a picture of the parents climbing the walls of the building. You seen stuff like that? It's cheating, there's bribery, and there's just so much pressure because it's so competitive. And so you really can't even think about things. But we've been very successful. Our movement's been very successful in Delhi and other places where we've established ashrams near the university where we have university students, near IIT. Actually, one of my disciples, very nice, Praneshra, you met Praneshra? You met him. Praneshra, he went to IIT and they had this ashram or something nearby, and they preached him and he became a great devotee, and and he's still excelling materially too. So we have to assure people that becoming Krishna conscious doesn't mean neglecting your material life. You can still be and he's extremely successful, and now he's building a preaching center at Govardhan, right on the Parikrama path.
Is it the same one we distributed books and you inaugurated? That same
Yeah. That's Praneshra.
Wow.
It's a shorter guy.
Yeah.
He's
No,
short.
I'm talking about the preaching place. Is it the same place?
No. We were just renting that place.
Okay.
He just actually is building. He bought land recently, because he's married now. He bought land right on the Parikrama path, near Sankarsana Kund, and he's building a place with actually some guest facility there. So, it's time. No more time for questions because we have a schedule today. So sorry for those of you online. Thank you for joining us. And some people are online and wearing a mask just to protect me. You can't get the virus through the computer. Okay, we have to end now. All right, thank you very much. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila